I don't know. I think when I read this first, I was like not as into forgiveness as I am now. But I was like, it could never be me. Hi besties, it's Cain and welcome to my channel where we read and talk about black books and sometimes other things. If you like books and reading black stories like I do, make sure you hit the subscribe and be sure to like this video. Okay. Today I want to talk about reading diversely. I do have my notes here, so just if I look down, that's what I'm doing, right? But so I want to talk about reading diversely and really what that means to me. So like I'm sure you've all been seeing the discourse on TikTok about like reading diversely, and that one girl, that one woman in the blue shirt who was just yelling.
Tell me what I seek out for my relaxing time, for my downtime. You don't get to tell me that I need to stress myself out making sure that I read enough books written by a black author, a gay author, a transgender author, or any other fucking person.
About people making her read diversely and like y'all aren't gonna make her do what she doesn't want to do, blah, blah, blah. And to me that was a bit of an overreaction, but whatever, right? So I just want to talk a little bit about that discourse. I'm sorry, it shouldn't have been that funny, right? But like she was so serious and I was like, why are you coming on the internet screaming for 10 minutes? I actually don't know how long it is. I didn't watch the whole thing, but why are you coming on the internet screaming? Like, girl. Anyways, so really what does it mean to read diversely? So like broadly speaking, it means to kind of like read about experiences that like you don't experience, right? So like reading about other people, about different things, and so it looks kind of differently for different people, right? So like for white readers, that would be like reading black authors or other stories by like people of color, right? So other cultures. And for black readers like me, I think that would also mean like reading other cultures, right? And so I know that I said that I read black books, and I do. Like mostly I read black stories and black women authors. So that's what I read, but I can read diversely within the scope of only reading black or reading the majority black authors, because I can read black authors across the diaspora, right? But yeah, so like if I can read stories from black women across the diaspora, that is largely different than my culture. That is reading diversely. So like this diversify your bookshelf discourse started largely, I don't want to say in opposition, but like to kind of combat the like overwhelmingly white space that is traditional publishing, right? So like traditionally published authors are usually white. There's not a lot of diversity there, like in authors and in the books that we're seeing pushed out. And then even the books that these publishers are like the books and then the influencers they're using to push out these books, it's not very diverse. And so that's where kind of this diversify your bookshelf discourse came from. A few of my mutuals on TikTok have been talking about it for a while, but in fact they did stop over this past week for the global strike to amplify stories coming out of Palestine. So hashtag free Palestine. And just as an aside, I have linked of resources to educate yourself on what's going on in Palestine, and I have that linked in my bio, but I'll also put it in the description below, because I think it's important that we educate ourselves, we inform ourselves, and we help if we can with what we can. So just as an aside, that's going to be in the description, so definitely check it out. Yeah. So my opinion on the matter of reading diversely is that people should do it. I think it's important that we intentionally read diverse stories and that we don't just kind of put ourselves into a little like thought bubble where we're just like an echo chamber where we're just like throwing out our ideas and they're coming right back to us, right? Like you can't grow and learn if you don't open yourself up to diverse thoughts and thought processes and forms of thinking, right? So like I said, for white people, that probably means reading Black authors, right? It does. You can't ever fully like experience what, like, as a white person in America, you can't experience like what it's like for me as a Black woman in America to live. But by reading these stories, by talking to other people, by following like bookish creators that don't look like you, that are diverse, that talk about these issues, you can start creating an understanding of like the experiences that you don't see in where you live, or just in the circles that you're in, right? And I think that's important. And then for Black readers, this looks like reading books by people, like other people of color. So like Asian Americans, or like people of Asian descent, people of Hispanic descent. And then again, reading stories by authors across the diaspora. So like you can read, as a Black reader, you can read Black authors that aren't American. And that is reading diversely. Like you are involved in their, not involved, you're immersing yourself in their culture by reading these stories, right? And so you learn all kinds of things that you wouldn't have experienced as a Black American woman, about like a story, like while reading a story about a Black Nigerian woman in her home country, right? And I think I've been trying to do a better job of reading, intentionally reading books about, like intentionally reading romance books about people that I don't identify with. But that's the thing too. It's like, as I'm reading these stories that like have experience that are vastly different from mine, I feel like I in turn learn something about myself, or my thought processes, or the ways of thinking that I had. Like I feel like I learn something about myself every single time, right? So there's a few books that I read last year that I think were pretty cool. One is about one is set in Sweden, but it follows 3 Black women who are kind of like intertwined. Well, their lives in Sweden are revolved around this one man. So one works for him, one's in a relationship with him, and one is a refugee who lived at the house that he sends money to, and like and funds is the word I was looking for. And so I think that was a really interesting take, because the 2 of the women were American that moved to Sweden. One was a refugee from Somalia, moved to Sweden, and that was a really good book. I'll talk more about that book later because I think it's in one of these recommendations. It is, but yeah. So like those experiences, and so I could kind of see myself in those experiences, like as a Black American woman. I've never lived in Sweden, but I think that was just a super interesting book and a super interesting perspective that I wouldn't have had if I just only read books about Black American women. Like reading diversely looks different for everybody. And then also reading diversely, as a person who reads Black books, my main genre is romance. If you follow me on TikTok or Instagram for a while, you've seen that I really just read romance. But one of the things that I've been trying to do more intentionally this year is to read books in different genres, read Black books in different genres, right? So I've been reading some like contemporary fiction and some historical fiction, kind of being more intentional about reading different books myself, like different genres. So even I can do that within romance. Like I could read excuse me, Black contemporary romance, Black adult romance, Black YA romance, Black what do they call romanticy, like I'm trying to think of a book. I feel like Is that fantasy? Was this? I feel like it was kind of fantasy. This Poison Heart and this Poison Fate. It's I think it's it's a YA fantasy duology that has a little sapphic romance in it. It's YA, so it's like not spicy. I feel like I need to say that, but and yeah, and I can read sapphic romances. I've been really getting into sapphic romances. I do like a sapphic romance. I think I have some recommendations later on in this video as well. But yeah, so like also like inside of like reading Black romance and like Black authors, I can read different genres, which like is a different experience, as well as across different cultures. And then I forgot what I was gonna say. But yeah, so as well as across different cultures, but also I'm more intentionally like reading books by authors of colors that are not Black, right? So authors of Asian descent, authors of Hispanic descent. I'm trying to think. I just read a Palestinian author. Let's see. Last year I read Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. I'm gonna have to look that up. That was a really good book. It was a YA kind of like coming of age book, and it was a little sad. But this is from the perspective of like the not firstborn, but like a first generation American, like Mexican American, who was born to refugees or immigrants, not refugees. But that was a really interesting perspective that I would never have on my own because that's not my story. I've got some like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 books that I want to talk about that I read last year that were pretty diverse. So first is We Deserve Monuments. I'm gonna put it on the screen here. We Deserve Monuments by Jazz Hammonds, and that was such a beautiful book. I think We Deserve Monuments is a really good story. It's a YA story. It's a sapphic like LGBT romance. I wouldn't call it a romance. I'd call it a coming of age story of like that has like a queer romance storyline in it. But it also has some like history in it, and it's just a beautiful story. So the main character has to move back from DC to her like mom's small town because her maternal grandmother is really, really sick, and the mom's coming back to kind of help her. And then while she's there, she's really like coming to grips with like who she is and her grandmother's history, and then like the people around her. It's just a beautiful story of like coming of age and being true to who you are. And so I really love that book. It was so good, so good. The next book is Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. So that's a sapphic rivals to lovers romance. Now, rivals to lovers is not my favorite romance trope, but I do think that it like this one was really well done. I really like that. And also I think I like rivals to lovers and like enemies to lovers, which I think people use maybe interchangeably, but like I feel like the definition of enemy, like there's no way that you can go from enemies to lovers. Like, and I think that's what makes me the most upset about the like enemies to lovers trope, because it's just like it's unrealistic. Rivals to lovers I can see, you know what I mean? But yeah, so that was really cute. So it's about 2 artists who have like went to college together, and then they were rivals, and then they end up working at the same comic book company, and they're competing in a competition like online. So it's really cute. It's really cute because they have this like competition that's kind of mostly in their head, but then it's like also real life. And I think that's funny because like I feel like most of the time when we're competing with someone, it's just in our heads. But anyways, I thought that was a really cute way to do it. And then I think there's also themes in there about like working too hard and pushing yourself too hard and like finding the balance between work and rest, which I thought was a good message. The next is Real by Kennedy Ryan. It was one of the first Kennedy Ryan books I've ever read, and it was so good. I loved it so much. So it's like a forbidden romance, like a forbidden Hollywood romance. So main character is on Broadway, and then this movie producer sees her on Broadway, and then he's like, okay, so this is who I want in my movie. And then basically it's like them working together but then like falling in love. And then there's disability representation. So she has like the non-fatal version of a chronic disease, and then it turns into kind of the fatal version. And then like over the course of like the movie and their relationship and afterwards, like you can kind of see like their romance and their relationship grow as like her health kind of, I don't want to say like diminishes, but like the severity of her health condition like gets worse. And then there's also like the main character's like family drama, which I thought was really well done, but also like I didn't love that, like, I don't know. I think when I read this first, I was like not as into forgiveness as I am now. But I was like, it could never be me. So I was a little upset about the resolution of the family drama. But like as I'm older now, I feel like that makes sense. It was a beautiful book, and even when I didn't like really like how the like reconciliation of the family happened, I was still like 5 stars. So this is a very, very good book. And then the next is In Every Mirror She's Black by Lola Akinmade Akostrom, and that was the book that I was talking about a little bit earlier in this video about the 3 women who are in Sweden because of this like one man. And that was a really good it was a really good book. It was very sad, so it was like my first kind of like sad book in a while, and so I think that's kind of what kickstarted the book that I'm like the sad beautiful book that I'm on now. But it was a very sad book, and I think that one of the major themes that I saw when I read it was loneliness, and how kind of like lonely and isolating it is to be like a Black woman abroad. And so that was, two of the women were from America, and then one was from Somalia, and then that was kind of a theme among them all, like loneliness in Sweden. So and next I want to talk about Against the Loveless World by Susan Abelhauer. That is the last book that I just read, and this is the book that I mentioned earlier that is by a Palestinian author, and this was also a sad beautiful book. It was so good. It was so good. Like, it's a book. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me angry. It was a beautiful, beautiful book. It's the story of a Palestinian woman who is is a prisoner of war in an Israeli prison, and so she's telling her story. So like she's telling her story about how she grew up, and then like she was married young, and her husband abandoned her, and then she was tricked into sex work, and then it just kind of it's a story about like love and struggle and even joy on the backdrop of like the Israeli occupation of Palestine, right? So she was born in Kuwait of refugee parents, but then she and her family had to become refugees and move to Jordan because of the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait. And so it's basically like her, and it's also like a coming of age story, or like a finding yourself story. I feel like I interchange coming of age and finding yourself story. Like I interchange those phrases, but they're not the same. But it kind of is a coming of age story because we meet her when she's young. Well, like we meet her when she's old, but his story starts when she's young, like not even 20. Like I think she's still a teenager when she gets married. Like, I'm pretty sure she's like 18 when she gets married or something. Anyways, it's a super good book, and I'll put it on the screen as well. It was a super good book. There are literally so many other stories that I've read that like have nothing to do with me, right? Like they're not like a shared experience with me. And I would have never learned about myself or about those cultures if I hadn't read these books. And I think it's important that we all do that. Ultimately, reading diversely helps you grow. It helps you learn about yourself. It helps you grow. And I think that's one of the things that makes me so sad when people get on this internet yelling about how nobody can make them read diversely and like how they're never going to read diversely or they don't want to read diversely or blah, 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 all these excuses. It's just like I'm looking at someone who like stopped growing so long ago. So let's take a second to talk about how you can read diversely. Hi besties! As you're looking for ways to read more diverse stories, I want to invite you to Bestie Book Club. Bestie Book Club is a virtual book club where readers like you can dive into the diverse stories of Black authors. Join us every month as we read, talk, and laugh. The link to sign up is in the description. Honestly, I think reading diversely is like super, super easy. It's really easy, especially with like how close we are to the internet, right? Like you can literally just type into Google, just type. These are things you can Google and then like you'll get a bunch of information, right? Like you'll get a bunch of information on like Latinx writers who write science fiction, Asian writers who write horror books, right? Black writers who write romance. Like you can get all this information by literally typing 2 or 3 words in a Google search. Today, I'm going to make it even easier for you. And I'm going to give you 4 of my 4 romance recs if you're looking to start getting into reading and to read diversely. And I chose these 4. So like, I chose these 4 because they're kind of like lighter, like fluffier, shorter romance books to kind of get you like into it. And this is also like if you're trying to read romance or if you are a romance reader and you're trying to read more diversely, these would be great ways to kind of jump in. So the first one is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. That is probably right now my favorite book, my favorite romance book. I really like Talia Hibbert. She's got quite a bit of books, but so Get a Life, Chloe Brown is the first book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, which is three books that follow 3 sisters as they fall in love. Talia Hibbert is a British writer, so she's a Black disabled British writer, and she writes cute fluffy romances that also, is it fluffy if it's also spicy? I don't know, I need to look at those definitions, but it's a bit spicy. But she also wrote a YA romance, which is also super good. So, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and also Talia Hibbert is a good author to kind of start with, I think. Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. I know I mentioned it earlier. It's a sapphic romance, and there's not a lot that's too heavy in it, I think. So it was a relatively quick read. I think the romance was really good. I liked how we kind of get involved with these characters. The character development is really, really good. It's also got a little spice in it. I don't think there's too much. I think there's maybe just like one main spicy scene, I'm thinking. But that's pretty good. And then Take a Chance by Mieko May. That's a really cute, like romantic, like romance novella. So it's short. I think it's maybe 80 pages. It's definitely less than 100 pages. But it's a very, very quick. Is it 80 pages? I should have looked that up. But it's a very, very fast, like quick read that'll kind of get you into a romance mood, get you reading. So it's kind of like a reconnection of sorts. So the main character goes on vacation. She's supposed to go with her sister, but the main character goes on vacation and she's supposed to go with her sister, but her sister ends up not being able to make it because something comes up with her kids. So she's by herself, and then who does she run into but one of her old classmates when they were in high school, and he's always had a crush on her, and she was like you was always messing with me. And then so it's like a reconnection, and then they hang out, and it's also kind of like a limited time thing, so it's like we're only here for the next few days, so there's a little bit of spice in there too. But it's a really cute romance, and it's also like it's quick, and so you don't get like the kind of happy ending that like romances would, but it's kind of like a happy ending there, and then like but like in the middle of their relationship, you know what I mean? So that was super cute. And then a YA romance for you is Love Radio. It does talk briefly about kind of like a heavy topic. It's like mentioned like it alludes to like a sexual harassment, sexual assault situation. But it's a very cute coming of age story. And I think what I liked most about it is that we get these like two dual, like it's a dual POV. So like the male main character and the female main character, but they're both obviously like in high school and dealing with their own things, right? So like the male main character is dealing with like the disability of his mom, and what he wants to do, like, so where he wants to go to school and what he wants to do with his life and his career, but like balancing that, like he needs to help his mom because it's just him, his mom, and his younger brother who is also got like ADHD, right? And then the female main character is dealing with the kind of like SA and like sexual harassment that she's dealt with, while also like trying to figure out who she can talk to about that and what to do. So like she's isolated herself after that. And so I really like that, but it's also like both of them like finding themselves, like healing themselves, or like healing through, you know, once they finally start leaning on community, and then finding each other in that madness. And so I loved that. It was one of the best books that I read. Also another good one, just a quick shout out, is Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling by Elise Bryant. Beautiful book. It's also YA, and it's along those same lines of like coming of age, really finding your truth, finding your voice, and like living for you instead of like putting people on a pedestal and like trying to be someone you're not just to get someone else. So like I really enjoyed that book as well. So I gave you 5 recommendations of romances to get you started into reading diversely. But like I said, I'm still trying to read diversely in terms of different genres. So feel free to put your favorite like diverse reads in different genres in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys are reading and what you think I should be reading. Last but not least, let me talk about what I'm reading this week. So I just went to the library yesterday in Annapolis, Maryland. Look for a YouTube video on that coming soon as well. But I got some books. I got 4 books from the library, but I'm only focusing on 2 this week because I don't know that I could read 4 books in a week. I don't know. Maybe. Probably not 4 big books. But the first one I'm going to be reading is Patience is a Virtue. Patience is a virtue. Patience is a subtle thief. So this is a one of the books that I was saying. I think it's going to be a beautiful and sad book. So this is the main character's name is Patience, and this is set in a politically volatile 1990s Nigeria. So another way to like read diversely across the diaspora. But so it says hope and circumstance define a young woman's life in this heartbreaking tale of lost innocence set in politically volatile 1990s Nigeria. So I'm really excited to jump into this. I'm probably going to start it tomorrow on my commute to work. And the next one I'm reading is The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. So Maggie moves to Belle River to run her best friend's struggling bookstore, but running a bookstore in the town with a famously bookish history isn't easy. So basically like everybody in like the historical like literary society in Belle River are like trying to put her in a box, and so she can't sell anything like that's like contemporary basically. So she started an underground book club. So and then she's running a series of events celebrating the books readers actually love. But then she like uncovers a secret, and then she'll need to decide what's more important, the books that formed a small town's history or the stories poised to change it all. So I'm really excited about this one. This isn't a romance, actually. So neither one of these, I think, are romances. So I'm proud of myself for not reading romance. So let me know in the comments what you're reading. I'm so excited to start these. Let me know what you're reading, and also drop in any recs that you think I should be reading. So yeah, all right, besties. It was great chatting with you today. All right, besties, so it was great chatting with you today. Make sure you subscribe and like this video, and don't forget to leave me any diverse recommendations that you have in the comments. Bye.